What if Jon Snow didn't kill Daenerys Targaryen? Let's see what might happen if he didn't. Daenerys stands overlooking the ruined capital of King's Landing, with Jon Snow standing behind her as she makes her proclamation. She is now the one and only Queen of the Seven Kingdoms. With new titles come new responsibilities, starting with some unpleasant business regarding her former hand, Tyrion Lannister. Daenerys initially wants him put to death, just like other traitors. However, Jon Snow advocates for mercy because Tyrion committed no treason. Jon convinces her to exile him instead and strips him of his titles and lands. But with the remaining great houses now loyal to her, Daenerys can now move on with her plans to free the slaves of the world. However, her armies are badly mauled after her campaign in the Seven Kingdoms. She will need to raise fresh levies elsewhere, in Slavers Bay. She insists that Jon Snow join her, saying that as her king, it is only right he sees his subjects across the narrow sea. But it's also partially because she doesn't like the idea of leaving him alone in Westeros. She appoints a council of lords to rule in Westeros in her absence. When they arrive in Slavers Bay, they are greeted with cheers and flower petals. In contrast to the war and destruction of Westeros, this is a welcome change, and Daenerys is hailed as the mother of dragons. Jon Snow is given a welcome like no other, where he's treated like a hero and for once doesn't feel like a bastard. Daenerys issues a call to arms to the freed men, telling them about her dream and how she vows to free every slave across the known world. As former slaves, she hopes that they will rally to her cause, but few answer the call. I don't understand. Surely former slaves of all people understand the horrors of slavery. Why will they not rise? This land is at peace. For the small folk like this, it's all they care about. Wars across the world do not interest them. Then I will make them see. I cannot do this without them. Rather than let the matter rest, Daenerys requires all former slavers to send one member of their family to join her new army, as well as any freedmen who own a certain amount of property. Grey Worm and Jon enforce these policies. Jon has little sympathy for slavers and readily conscripts them. Most of these soldiers are drilled much like Unsullied, learning to use the spear and shield. The first target is the remaining slaver cities around Slavers Bay. Although Meereen, Yunkai and Astapor are the largest and most prominent, there are a few smaller cities like Tolos and Iria. Taking flight on Drogon, Daenerys strikes Tolos. First, while Jon Snow and Grey Worm lead the Unsullied to Mantares. In the dead of night, Drogon appears from Tolos' harbor. His sleek black form is practically hidden until he unleashes a column of fire at the ships below. Sailors can only scream as they leap into the water or are burned to nothingness. The entire navy goes up in flames while soldiers desperately scramble to try and counterattack. Archers, fire lances and ballistae are rolled forward, but these are too slow, and their smaller bolts do little to stop Drogon, but give him new targets. By morning, the coastal parts of the city are reduced to blackened scar, while Drogon retreats to a nearby ridge to rest. This message is clear, and soon, a delegation is sent, agreeing to lay down their arms and join the Queen's coalition. Soon, the nearby cities like Iria follow suit, but they do not get off so easily. Daenerys recalls their support for the Masters and orders that a powerful garrison be placed in their city. Grey Worm also reports similar success in Mantares, where his Unsullied scale the walls of the monstrous city. They soon freed the slaves in the city and turned them against their vile masters. She recalled how they had murdered her envoys and ordered their masters to be murdered, and their families sent to Meereen as hostages, while fresh troops were levied in the captured city. Jon Snow warns Daenerys of being too harsh on the captured cities and warns that she may soon face a rebellion. As he says this, he thinks back to the things he saw during the sack of King's Landing and hopes to avoid a repeat of that. Hopefully, Daenerys doesn't resort to that, though she does impose garrisons and forces them to accept an appointed governor, as well as send soldiers and supplies for her next attack on New Gis itself. Unlike the other cities, New Gis is heavily populated with a large army. Their lockstep legions will give them a strong fight. To conquer it, Daenerys gathers her forces further west. She orders that the gold from the Westerlands, gained from the Reach, ships from the Iron Islands, and soldiers from all over the Seven Kingdoms come to supplement her armies. Although Westeros has had some time to rebuild, they do not believe that they are ready for a large-scale war so quickly. However, Daenerys is adamant and orders these soldiers to be sent. By the time the soldiers arrive, New Gis is ready, its harbor full of warships and its walls bristling with siege engines and archers. Below, the lockstep legions of New Gis stand in rigid formations, shields polished to gleam in the sun and their spears ready. Daenerys Targaryen surveys the scene from the saddle of Drogon. Around her sound the cries of her army. The Dothraki scream their war cries from the eastern dunes. In the center are the unsullied legions in perfect order, mixed in with Westerosi and Slavers Bay conscripts. On the other side are lines of gleaming knights. This will not be like Meereen or Astapor. New Gis has prepared for her. The lockstep legions are disciplined, drilled and fortified behind high walls. And they have allies, mercenaries from the free cities, warships in the harbor, and countless slaves conscripted to fight. Today, we break the chains of New Gis, the first of the great slaving cities. We bring freedom to its slaves and justice to its masters. The Dothraki thunder forward first, a tidal wave of hooves and steel. Their charge smashes into the outer defenses with terrifying speed, but the defenders hold firm. Javelins rain down from the walls, cutting down riders and horses alike. The lockstep legions advance methodically, their shield walls absorbing the impact of the charge and striking back with deadly precision. Daenerys pulls them back and instead has them fire their arrows at the legions once they are densely packed. This disrupts their formation slightly and gives the Unsullied a chance to advance, meeting them head-on. Siege engines rumble into place, hurling stones and flaming debris at the walls. With the defenders distracted, Drogon launches strafing, runs at the enemy forces, though Daenerys is careful to avoid getting too close to the ballistae. Jon Snow leads the cavalry charges as the knights crash into the sides of the legion. Hundreds fall in this initial charge, but rather than fold, two legions twist to meet their threat, locking their shields and crouching behind them as they thrust their spears up. Here, corpses pile up by the hundreds as soldiers struggle to break through. They are like a wave crashing against a rocky shore. With each attack, their forces weaken. At sea, New Gis's warships unleash volleys of fire arrows at Yara's fleet, setting several ships ablaze and turning the sea into an ocean of blood and corpses. The lockstep legions, reinforced by mercenaries, begin to push back, focusing on the weakened right flank of the conscripted slaves. A salient forms in their lines as the slaves begin to break. Jon Snow rides to rally them, but their forces have taken a beating, and he's greeted by the sight of pure carnage, hundreds hacked down and on the verge of death. It seems like they're about to break, but Daenerys dives low, just out of arrow range, as her dragon's shadow covers them all. Forward! We are the breakers of chains. Spurred by her presence, the freedmen begin to rally and redouble their efforts. Surprised by this aggression, the legions are pushed back and divert their forces to counter the charge. The remaining horsemen form another attack, and this time they manage to break through. The gates are knocked down and the fighting spills onto the city. The Dothraki surge through the breach, their curved blades carving a bloody path. But New Gis was ready. Traps had been laid in the narrow alleys, pits lined with spikes, vats of boiling oil, and barricades bristling with defenders. For every street the attackers took, they paid a heavy price. It is only because of Drogon and his fiery breath that burns through the defenses, leveling large portions of the city, that the city is eventually taken. The city was hers, but at a terrible cost. Thousands of her men lay dead or dying, and the streets ran red with blood. Jon Snow sees all of this. From the ground, surveying the carnage, there is not a street or alleyway not coated in blood. Some are so choked up that they clog the passage. Nugis fares worse, as their legions are reduced to nothing and much of the city is reduced to ash. Freed slaves cheer her name, but their joy is not shared by her soldiers. Many of them come to her asking to be sent home, but each one who approaches receives the same answer. The wheel is not yet broken. So long as there is a city that trades slaves, it will never be finished. Her resolve troubles her troops, who begin to fear a cycle of endless war. As freed men cheer Westerosi, soldiers begin to feel more and more like slaves. Your soldiers are exhausted, Daenerys. They've sailed from all over your empire and won this battle. Now many are questioning why they're here at all. Some just want to go home. This is not just a war. This is a crusade for justice, for freedom, and it must continue. So long as cities like Volantis and the free cities profit from chains, the wheel is not broken. No one's questioning the justice of your cause, Your Grace. But even the best armies need time to recover. Pushing them now without rest risks breaking them. The free cities are wealthy, powerful, and most importantly, connected. Some Giscari ships escaped. They're warning Volantis, Cahor, and the rest as we speak, and we'll meet them. Begging your pardon, Your Grace, but that's easy for you to say, flying high and mighty on your dragon. For us lads on the ground, battles aren't as clean. It's true, the casualties here were heavy. And what say you, Snow? Did you bother to see how many of your people we had to bury in this battle? I chartered a ship just to bring back the bodies of my men. You're asking men to die for cities they've never even heard of. Answer me, gentlemen. If the people of Westeros were enslaved, would you hesitate to fight for them? Would you abandon them to their fate? Without much fighting I've had to do, I'm starting to feel like one. This isn't about hesitation, it's about strategy. The free cities have deeper coffers than we could ever hope to match. They'll hire every sellsword from here to Volantis and build fleets to rival even your dragons. And if I stop now, what happens? Volantis will rebuild its fleets. Cahor will forge its blades with the blood of slaves. If I stop, the wheel grows stronger, the chains tighter. We keep going. The room falls silent. Slowly, the other advisors get to their feet and leave without another word. Jon stays behind but looks conflicted. This one is ready to follow, but we are few. Many do not understand. They lack our strength. Then make them see, my friend. Train them in your way so they will have your spirit. If I may, perhaps I should. Take command of the Westerosi. Let me try to speak to their lords. However, she does receive some good news from Korth. They are ready to negotiate terms of surrender. Daenerys personally journeys to Qarth to talk with them. She meets with their ambassadors, and they agree to halt the slave trade, release the slaves in the city, and provide Daenerys with support in her war effort. But none of this does anything to dull their pride or arrogance. I have heard that you intend to make war in the free cities. Your spies serve you well. I do not require spies for this. Every fishwife and slave in the continent knows of your plans. The free cities are preparing, building their armies, and forming a coalition. Your empire will bleed itself dry upon the disputed lands. You are awfully prideful for one who surrendered to the might of a dragon and the ferocity of the Dothraki. Your army is formidable, but your empire is weak. To have such a thing guarantees its collapse. Daenerys says nothing, simply accepting the city's surrender and then flying off without another word. But as she returns to Slavers Bay, the ambassadors' words prove prophetic as her camp is on the verge of war. Your Grace, the camp is on the brink of chaos. The men fight among themselves, freed men against former slaves, Westerosi against Giscari, and Dothraki against everyone. Many more have deserted. What has been done to restore order? Jon Snow and I have tried, but the divisions run deep. They grow restless, questioning why they remain out here. Daenerys finds Jon in his pavilion, trying to mediate between a group of Westerosi and Giscari. Despite his best efforts, the only thing that truly keeps them united is Daenerys and her dragon. When neither one is there, their unity collapses. Their argument has devolved into a shouting match as Jon tries to calm them down, to no avail. Things look like they will devolve into a fight until Daenerys steps forward. Enough. We're supposed to be fighting together, not tearing each other apart. Her voice is shouted down until Drogon rises, his jaw wide, releasing a blast of fire into the sky. The soldiers flinch, their arguments dying instantly as they turn to face her. You call yourselves my army, yet you fight each other like children squabbling over scraps. Look around you. Do you see the enemy here? Or are you so blind that you would destroy yourselves before you even reach the battlefield? And you, Jon, you were charged with keeping this army together. I've done what I can, Daenerys, but this army is not like the Night's Watch or the North. They don't share the same purpose, the same cause. Then make them share it. You fight for me because I fight for freedom, for a world without chains, without masters, without division. If you cannot see that, if you cannot fight as one, then you have no place in my army. Suddenly, one Northman stands up and spits. Fine by me. The Lord marches off, and suddenly others begin to nod. Finally, something we can agree on. The captain motions for his men to follow. Several other Westerosi follow. Then the freedmen glance at one another and follow after. Soon the group is growing larger and larger, but the rest remain cowed by Drogon's presence. And what if they don't believe in this war, Daenerys? What then? Then they will follow me whether they believe it or not. Jon watches her for a long moment, his face unreadable, before turning away. Behind her, Drogon lets out another low growl, a warning to anyone who might still harbor thoughts of rebellion. Still, Daenerys realizes that staying here is pointless and begins her march to the free cities rather than attack Volantis directly. She leads them northwest to the weaker cities of Qohor, Norvos, and Lorath. These cities fall without much fight, and soon their slave markets burn, their defenders scatter, and morale is lifted. And not too far away is Braavos, a free city famed for its opposition to slavery, and Daenerys flies there to try to seek allies. As she approaches the Titan of Braavos, Daenerys feels a flicker of hope. The Braavosi, champions of liberty, should see her as a kindred spirit, but when she meets with the leaders of the Iron Bank, their reception is far colder than she imagined. We admire your resolve, Queen Daenerys, but Braavos will not join your war. You oppose slavery, as do I. Why would you stand against me? Because we oppose tyranny in all its forms, even when it comes wrapped in the banner of liberation. And who better to judge tyranny than you, Daenerys Stormborn? A familiar voice echoes through the chamber. The dwarf offers a cold smile as he saunters over to sit beside the Tytos. Tyrion, what are you doing here? Conquest and discord. Daenerys' war on Slavers Bay divides her forces and sparks rebellion. Daenerys' ambitious plan to liberate all slaves across the known world is underway, but it's immediately facing problems. Fresh from the hard-won but bloody victory in King's Landing, her armies are depleted and morale is low. To replenish her ranks, she looks east, to the very land she intends to liberate, Slavers Bay. She insists Jon Snow accompany her. Ostensibly, this is to showcase him as her king, to her new subjects across the narrow sea. But perhaps more truthfully, it's born of her unease leaving him unattended in Westeros, where whispers of dissent are already starting to brew. She leaves, a council of lords to govern in her stead, a decision that will have unforeseen consequences later on. Upon their arrival in Slavers Bay, Daenerys and Jon are greeted as heroes. The freedmen shower them with adulation, a stark contrast to the fear and resentment that lingered in Westeros. Jon for once feels accepted, valued, not merely tolerated as a bastard son. Daenerys, fueled by this wave of support, issues a call to arms, urging the freed slaves to join her crusade. However, the response is tepid. Why won't they rise up? Former slaves of all people should understand the importance of freedom. But these freedmen are not concerned with the endless battles for Westeros. Peace and stability are all they desire and crave. War simply does not interest them. Daenerys refuses to accept this apathy. "Then I will make them see," she declares, her tone hardening. She decrees that every former slaver must send a member of their family to join her new army, along with any freedman who owns a certain amount of property. Grey Worm and Jon are tasked with enforcing this unpopular policy. Jon, while lacking sympathy for the slavers themselves, feels a growing sense of unease at the conscription of the freedmen. This is not the liberation he envisioned. The campaign begins with swift strikes against the smaller Jakari cities surrounding Slavers Bay, while Meereen, Yunkai and Astapor are the most powerful and prominent. Several smaller cities such as Talos and Iria remain under slaver control. Daenerys, riding Drogon, descends upon Talos without warning. From the sky, she unleashes a fiery inferno upon the city's harbor, incinerating ships and reducing the coastal districts to smoldering ruins. The message is clear: submit or burn. Talos quickly yields, sending a delegation to pledge allegiance to the Queen. Iria follows suit, but Daenerys, remembering their past support for the slave masters, imposes a heavy garrison and demands substantial tribute. Meanwhile, Grey Worm achieves similar success in Mantarus. The Unsullied breach the city walls, liberate the slaves, and incite them to turn on their former masters. Daenerys, recalling the murder of her envoys in Mantarus, orders the execution of the city's masters and sends their families to Meereen as hostages. Fresh troops are levied within the captured city to bolster her forces. Jon, witnessing these brutal tactics, expresses his concern to Daenerys. "You are being too harsh," he warns. "You risk sparking a rebellion." He recalls the horrors he witnessed during the sack of King's Landing, hoping to avoid a repeat. Daenerys dismisses his worries. She imposes garrisons, appoints governors, and demands soldiers and supplies from the conquered cities for her next target, New Gis. Unlike the other cities, New Gis is heavily fortified, boasting a large and disciplined army. Their lockstep legions are a formidable force, and Daenerys knows that conquering the city will not be easy. To prepare for the siege, Daenerys orders that gold from the Westerlands, ships from the Iron Islands, and soldiers from across the Seven Kingdoms be sent to supplement her armies. Westeros, still recovering from the wars and strife, are resistant to war on such a large scale again so soon. Daenerys is adamant and demands that these soldiers be sent east. By the time the Westerosi reinforcements arrive, New Gis is ready. Its harbor is bristling with warships, and its walls are lined with siege engines and archers. The lockstep legions stand in rigid formation, their shields gleaming in the sun, their spears ready to repel any attack. Daenerys surveys the scene from Drogon's back. Around her, the Dothraki scream their war cries, the Unsullied stand in unwavering ranks, and the Westerosi soldiers appear hesitant. "This will not be like Meereen or Astapor," Daenerys declares. "New Gis has prepared for us. The legions are disciplined, the walls are high, and the city has forged alliances, hiring mercenaries from the free cities and conscripting countless slaves to fight. Today," Daenerys cries, "we break the chains of New Gis, the first of the great slaving cities. We bring freedom to its slaves and justice to its masters." The Dothraki charge first, a wave of horses and steel crashing against the outer defenses. But the defenders hold firm, raining down javelins and arrows. The lockstep legions advance, their shield walls absorbing the impact of the charge and striking back with deadly precision. Daenerys pulls back the Dothraki and orders them to fire arrows into the densely packed legions. This disrupts their formation, giving the Unsullied a chance to engage them in close combat. Siege engines rumble into place, hurling stones and flaming debris at the walls. With the defenders distracted, Drogon launches strafing runs, unleashing fire upon the enemy forces. Jon Snow leads the Westerosi cavalry in a flanking maneuver. Hoping to break the Legion's lines, the fighting is fierce, and casualties mount on both sides. At sea, the Giscari warships clash with Yara Greyjoy's Iron Fleet, turning the waters into a churning mass of blood and wreckage. The lockstep legions, reinforced by mercenaries, begin to push back, targeting the weakened flanks of Daenerys' army. Jon Snow rallies the freedmen, urging them to stand their ground. Just as they are about to break, Daenerys and Drogon swoop down, their combined presence bolstering the freedmen's courage. Inspired by her presence, they rally and redouble their efforts, pushing back the legions and creating an opening in the enemy lines. The Westerosi cavalry exploit this breach, smashing through the Giscari defenses and opening the city gates. The Dothraki surge through the breach, their curved blades carving a bloody path through the streets, but New Gis is ready. Traps have been laid in the narrow alleys, pits lined with spikes, vats of boiling oil, and barricades bristling with defenders. For every street the attackers take, they pay a heavy price. Only Drogon's fiery breath, leveling large portions of the city, allows the attackers to overcome these defenses. Finally, the city falls, but at a terrible cost. Thousands of Daenerys' soldiers lie dead or dying, and the streets run red with blood. New Gis is devastated, its legions decimated, and much of its infrastructure reduced to ash. The freed slaves cheer Daenerys' name, but their joy is not shared by her soldiers. Many of them, exhausted and disillusioned, request to be sent home. But Daenerys refuses. The wheel is not yet broken, she insists. So long as there is a city that trades in slaves, it will never be finished. Her unwavering resolve troubles her troops, who begin to fear a cycle of endless war. As the freedmen celebrate their liberation, the Westerosi soldiers feel increasingly like slaves themselves, bound to Daenerys' relentless ambition. Jon, along with Tyrion, tries to reason with Daenerys, urging her to consider the needs and desires of her troops. Your soldiers are exhausted, Daenerys, Jon pleads. They have sailed from all over your empire and won this battle. Now, many are questioning why they're even here. Some just want to go home. Daenerys is unmoved. This war, she declares, is not just a war. It is a crusade for justice, for freedom, and it must continue. So long as cities like Korth and the free cities profit from chains, the wheel is not broken. Tyrion warns her of the dangers of overextending her forces. The free cities are wealthy, powerful, and most importantly, connected. Some Giscari ships escaped. They're warning Korth, Volantis, and the rest as we speak. Daenerys brushes aside these concerns. "And we will meet them," she retorts. A Westerosi soldier boldly challenges her. "Begging your pardon, your grace, but that's easy for you to say, flying high and mighty on your dragon. For us lads on the ground, battles aren't so clean," another adds. "You're asking men to die for cities they've never even heard of." Daenerys, losing patience, demands to know if they would hesitate to fight for Westeros if it were enslaved. Jon counters, "This isn't about hesitation. It's about strategy. The free cities have deeper coffers than we could ever hope to match. They'll hire every sellsword from here to Volantis and build fleets to rival even your dragons." Daenerys remains resolute. "And if I stop now, what happens? Korth will rebuild its fleets. Volantis will forge its blades with the blood of slaves. If I stop, the wheel grows stronger, the chains tighter. We keep going. The room falls silent. Slowly, The advisors rise and depart without another word. Daenerys is left standing alone, her vision of a world free from slavery overshadowing all other considerations. Daenerys' uncompromising approach is further isolating her, driving a wedge between her and those she relies on most. The seeds of rebellion are being sown, not just in the conquered cities, but within her own ranks. This tension will soon boil over, with potentially devastating consequences. Failed alliances and harsh truths. Braavos rejects Daenerys as Tyrion, returns with a costly warning. Let's dive into a world where Daenerys' dreams of conquest face their toughest test yet. With Westeros fractured and the free cities preparing for war, Daenerys seeks alliances to bolster her forces and solidify her rule. But as she soon discovers, not everyone is willing to bend the knee. Having secured a shaky peace, or at least a coerced compliance, in some of the former slaving cities, Daenerys sets her sights on a far more ambitious goal: Braavos. This city, famed for its wealth, its neutrality, and most importantly, its fierce opposition to slavery, seems like a natural ally. After all, wouldn't the champions of freedom welcome a queen who vows to break the chains of the world? Daenerys, atop Drogon, makes a grand entrance, soaring over the Titan of Braavos, a colossal statue that guards the city's harbor. The sight is meant to inspire awe and demonstrate her power, a not-so-subtle reminder of the dragon fire that can turn cities to ash. Landing in the city's opulent square, she's greeted by a delegation of Braavosi officials, stern-faced men and women clad in somber robes. She's escorted to the Iron Bank, the most powerful financial institution in the world. It's here, in a vast chamber filled with the hushed whispers of merchants and the clinking of gold, that she hopes to secure a crucial alliance. She's met by the bank's key holders, individuals whose decisions can topple kingdoms and shape the course of history. "We welcome you, Queen Daenerys," one of the key holders begins, his voice polite but laced with an undeniable coolness. "Your reputation precedes you." Daenerys inclines her head. "I come seeking not just welcome but alliance. Braavos and I share a common enemy: slavery. The free cities profit from the misery of others, and I intend to end their reign of terror." Another key holder speaks, a woman with sharp eyes that seem to penetrate Daenerys' very soul. "We admire your ambition, Queen Daenerys, but Braavos remains neutral in matters of foreign conflict. We are a city of trade, not war." "But surely," Daenerys argues, her voice rising slightly, "you understand the moral imperative. Slavery is an abomination, an injustice that cannot be tolerated." The first keyholder sighs, a subtle gesture of impatience. "Braavos opposes slavery, yes, but we also oppose tyranny in all its forms. And that, Queen Daenerys, is where our interests diverge." A familiar voice cuts through the tension, sending a chill down Daenerys' spine. "Indeed, who better to judge tyranny than you, Daenerys Stormborn?" Tyrion Lannister steps forward, a wry smile playing on his lips. He's aged, his face etched with lines of hardship and disillusionment, but his eyes, as always, are sharp and observant. "Tyrion!" Daenerys exclaims, her voice a mixture of shock and anger. "What are you doing here?" "Surviving, my queen," Tyrion replies, smoothly, "enjoying the sights of Braavos, something you've made rather difficult for the rest of us. Life in Westeros has become quite depressing since your departure." Daenerys' hand instinctively moves towards her side, where she no longer carries a dagger. "This man betrayed me," she says, her voice hardening. "I will not suffer his presence. "With all due respect to you," the female keyholder interjects, "Braavos is a free city. We will not order this man about like a servant. Besides, you may wish to hear what he has to say." Daenerys glares at Tyrion, her eyes burning with resentment. He stands there, an embodiment of everything she despises: treachery, cynicism, and the constant reminder of her failures in Westeros. "You will claim Westeros betrayed you," Tyrion begins, his voice calm and measured. "But the lords of the Seven Kingdoms bowed to you. They hailed you as their queen. And what did they do?" Daenerys snaps, her patience wearing thin. "They plotted against me. They whispered behind my back. They never truly accepted me. And what did you do?" Tyrion counters. "You left them. You abandoned your kingdom to return to Slavers Bay, dragging their sons and daughters into a war they did not want." A murmur runs through the Braavosi delegation. They exchange glances, clearly disturbed by Tyrion's words. "That is why I've come to inform you," Tyrion continues, "that the lords of Westeros have joined the free cities in this war. Unless you can come to terms, Daenerys, unless you are willing to negotiate." Daenerys scoffs. "Negotiate? With traitors and slavers? There will be no negotiations. I will bring fire and blood to every city that opposes me. I will burn their fleets, raise their walls, and crush their armies beneath the might of my dragon." "And what will that accomplish?" Tyrion asks, his voice laced with weariness. "Will you burn us all, your grace? Make slaves of those who refuse to kneel? Is that your vision for the world? A world ruled by fear and fire? I am not a slaver," Daenerys retorts, her voice rising in indignation. "I am a liberator. I free the oppressed. I break the chains." "No," Tyrion says, his gaze unwavering. "Tell me, your grace, what is a slave? Truly, is it not someone who lives under the will of another, someone who has no choice but to obey, someone who is forced to fight for a cause they do not believe in, someone who is terrified of the consequences of defiance?" Does that sound familiar? Daenerys clenches her fists, her knuckles white. She knows deep down that Tyrion's words hold a grain of truth. The Westerosi soldiers in her army, the conscripted freedmen of Slavers Bay, are they truly free? Or are they merely puppets dancing to the tune of her ambition? "You've become the greatest slaver of them all," Tyrion declares, his voice ringing with conviction. "You bind armies with fear and your people with fire. And you've convinced yourself that it's for their own good. Though no man in your army wears a collar, they have no choice in who they serve, no say in the battles they fight, and no escape from your fiery wrath." The Braavosi keyholders shift uncomfortably, their eyes darting between Daenerys and Tyrion. The atmosphere in the chamber is thick with tension. "Do you think your words will stop me, Tyrion?" Daenerys asks, her voice dangerously low. "Do you think they mean anything?" "I merely offer a perspective, your grace," Tyrion replies. "The choice is yours. Braavos seeks only peace and prosperity. But we will not stand idly by while a tyrant threatens the freedom of the world." "You wanted terms," Daenerys says, her eyes blazing with fury. "Here are mine. Join me or burn." The keyholders exchange a silent look. "The decision is made. You are warned, Mother of Dragons," the first keyholder says, his voice firm. "Your ancestors made such a claim before, but we did not. Bow then, and we shall not bow now. Braavos will not be intimidated." Daenerys turns and storms out of the Iron Bank, Drogon's shadow falling over the city as she takes flight. The alliance she desperately sought has been denied. Instead, she has gained another enemy, a powerful and influential city that will undoubtedly throw its weight against her. As she flies back to her camp, Daenerys reflects on Tyrion's words. They sting, not because they are untrue, but because they expose the uncomfortable reality of her reign. She is a queen, yes, but she rules through fear and force. Her armies are loyal, but their loyalty is born of obligation, not conviction. The battlefield outside Pentos is a storm of chaos and flames. Daenerys, perched atop Drogon, surveys the armies arrayed against her. The combined forces of the Free Cities and Westerosi rebels stretch across the horizon, a formidable alliance forged. In opposition to her rule, she recognizes Tyrion's banner on the far right flank, alongside the sigils of other Westerosi houses. traitors who have turned against their queen. Beside them are the mixed forces of the free cities, a patchwork of mercenaries, city guards, and conscripted slaves, united by their fear of Daenerys and their desire to protect their way of life. Beyond them are the hordes of sellswords they hired, eager for loot and bloodshed, adding to the chaos and unpredictability of the battlefield. Her forces stand resolute, though their numbers are dwarfed by the enemy. The Unsullied form an unbreakable wall in the center, their discipline and training unwavering. To their right, the Westerosi soldiers loyal to Daenerys face the sellswords, chosen specifically to avoid countrymen fighting countrymen, a cruel irony given the divisions within Daenerys' own army. On the left, the Dothraki warriors stand ready to meet their Westerosi counterparts, their eyes burning with anticipation for the coming battle. Daenerys raises her hand, signaling the Dothraki to charge. The screamers charge, their war cries echoing across the plain, a terrifying sound that strikes fear into the hearts of their enemies. They thunder towards the flanks, looking to envelop the enemy army in a wave of horseflesh and steel. But as they near, crushing the grass underfoot, a devastating trap is sprung. Several trebuchets fire, throwing not stones or pitch, but massive pots of wildfire. The ground erupts in emerald flames, engulfing the grasslands in a sea of fire. The Dothraki are thrown into chaos, their horses screaming as they rear and bolt, desperately trying to outrun the flames. The once mighty charge stalls, funneling what remains of her forces into narrow, pre-cleared paths on the flanks where the grass has been trimmed. Daenerys' soldiers hesitate, but advance through these paths, their faces grim as they brace for the enemy spears. The Unsullied fearlessly press forward, meeting the enemy spears with their own, fighting through walls of pikes even as they are impaled. But those who manage to fight through begin to hack at the pikemen, creating small breaches in their defenses. The same is true with the Dothraki, who form a tight shield wall and hunch behind their defenses, letting the Westerosi men batter themselves against their defenses. On the left, sellswords and Westerosi clash in a brutal match of savagery and desperation, a chaotic melee of sword and axe and spear. The fight is brutal, bloody, and short. The smell of burning flesh and the sight of their comrades consumed by green flames sap their will to fight. The Free City's disciplined phalanxes and Westerosi rebels press their advantage. Their cavalry, kept close to their formation and fresh from the fighting, gallop forward, smashing through the exhausted ranks and starting to break them. High above, Daenerys clenches her fists, her fury blinding. She sees Tyrion at the rear of the Westerosi line, his banner unmistakable. Her rage boils over. "Draras!" Daenerys shouts, her voice cracking with emotion. Drogon roars, his massive wings beating as he swoops towards Tyrion's position. The dragon's fire consumes the ground as he flies, leaving a path of destruction in his wake. Lannister troops scatter as they try to escape the inferno, their screams lost in the roar of the flames. However, Tyrion remains where he is, sitting in his tent and calmly sipping wine. This is just as he expected. He had gone to Braavos not to negotiate. That opportunity had long since passed. Instead, he wanted to bait Daenerys, to get her to kill him, to end his life in a blaze of glory, or perhaps in a final act of defiance. The last thing the dwarf hears is the ground erupting, not just with dragon fire, but with a relentless barrage of artillery and ballista fire that he had hidden in his camp. He smiles as he bursts into a ball of fire, his final act a bitter victory. Drogon roars in pain as 1, 2, 3 bolts strike him, piercing his scales. He thrashes violently, his massive body shaking with agony. The onslaught is unrelenting, a hail of projectiles tearing into his flesh. With a final anguished cry, Drogon crashes to the ground right in the midst of the wildfire, his body engulfed in emerald flames. Daenerys miraculously survives the fall, though she is thrown violently from Drogon's back. Dazed and battered, she stumbles to her feet. All around her is fire and death. Her army is in full retreat, the Dothraki scattering, the Westerosi turning on each other. The Unsullied hold their ground to the last, but are slaughtered to the last man, their unwavering discipline no match for the overwhelming force of the enemy. Daenerys falls to her knees, her vision blurred by smoke and tears. She hears the jeers of the rebels, the clash of swords, and the dying screams of her once great army. Around her, the world burns, but not by her command. The dream of a world free from chains is slipping away, replaced by the harsh reality of defeat. Amidst the ruin, Daenerys Targaryen walks off alone, fire and ruin. The battlefield outside Pentos is a maelstrom of chaos and flames. Daenerys, atop Drogon, for what may well be the last time, surveys the sprawling armies arrayed against her. This isn't just a battle, it's a reckoning. The combined forces of the Free Cities and the Westerosi rebels stretch as far as the eye can see, a grim testament to her crumbling empire. She recognizes banners she once thought were loyal, now arrayed against her. Stark, Arryn, even Lannister. Westeros is here, ready to finish what King's Landing started. Beside them are the meticulously drilled ranks of the Free Cities, a coalition forged in fear and greed. And beyond them, the endless ranks of sellswords, men whose loyalty is bought and sold like slaves themselves. Her own forces stand resolute, but they are outnumbered, outsupplied, and weary. The Unsullied, ever loyal, form an unbreakable wall in the center, a silver shield against the coming storm. To their right, the Westerosi soldiers still loyal to Daenerys, a mix of Northerners, Riverlanders, and those who truly believed in her vision, face the sellswords, a deliberate choice to avoid countrymen fighting countrymen. On the left, the Dothraki, though diminished in number, prepare to meet their Westerosi counterparts, a bitter irony considering Daenerys' promise to unite the world. Daenerys raises her hand, signaling the Dothraki to begin their charge. The screamers thunder forward, their war cries echoing across the plain, a primal roar against the cold, calculated advance of the enemy. They aim for the flanks, hoping to envelop the enemy army and shatter their formations, a tactic that has served them well in the past. But this is not the open plains of Essos. This is the disputed lands, a place of strategic choke points and cunning ambushes. As they near, crushing the tall grass underfoot, a horrifying sight unfolds. Several trebuchets, strategically hidden behind the enemy lines, fire. But they don't launch stones or flaming pitch. Instead, massive pots of wildfire arch through the air, their emerald glow painting a terrifying picture against the darkening sky. The ground erupts in a sea of green flames as the wildfire is released, engulfing the grasslands in an inferno of destruction. The Dothraki are thrown into utter chaos. Their horses scream in agony, their riders desperately trying to control the panicked beasts as they bolt in every direction, scattering like leaves in a hurricane. The once mighty charge stalls, the proud Khalasar reduced to burning wreckage. Those Dothraki that survive are forced to funnel through narrow, pre-cleared paths on the flanks, where the grass has been deliberately trimmed, a horrifying bottleneck designed to maximize the enemy's advantage. Daenerys' remaining soldiers hesitate, their faces etched with fear as they advance through these paths, knowing they are marching into a trap. The Unsullied, however, show no fear. They press forward fearlessly, meeting the enemy's spears with their own, fighting through walls of pikes, even as they are impaled by the cruel, unforgiving steel. But those who manage to break through begin to hack at the pikemen, their disciplined training and unwavering loyalty a beacon of hope in the face of overwhelming odds. The same is true for the Jakari troops, who form a tight shield wall, their faces grim with determination. They huddle behind their defenses, letting the Westerosi men batter themselves against their shields, a strategy of attrition designed to wear down the enemy's strength and spirit. On the left flank, sellswords and Westerosi clash in a brutal, desperate melee. The fight is a chaotic mess of steel and blood, a grim dance of survival where the only rule is to kill or be killed. Slavery versus desperation, each side fighting for their own reasons, each blow echoing with the weight of their past. There is no honor here, only the primal urge to survive. This battle quickly descends into an act of butchery as thousands of individual fights erupt around them, a swirling vortex of violence where every man is an island, fighting for his own life. The fight is brutal, and it is short. The overwhelming smell of burning flesh, the sickening sight of their comrades consumed by the green flames, slowly but surely saps the will of Daenerys' remaining soldiers. The Free City's disciplined phalanxes and the Westerosi rebels press their advantage, exploiting every weakness, every moment of hesitation. Their cavalry, kept close to their formations and fresh from the fighting, gallop forward, smashing through the exhausted ranks and finally breaking them. The lines begin to crumble, the hard-won ground lost to the relentless push of the enemy. High above, Daenerys clenches her fists, her fury blinding her. She sees banners in the distance, the Stark direwolf, the Arryn falcon, the Lannister lion. But then she sees him, Tyrion, at the rear of the Westerosi line, his banner unmistakable, his presence a personal betrayal that ignites a firestorm of rage within her. "Dracarys!" Drogon roars in response, his massive wings beating with furious power as he swoops down towards Tyrion's position, a black thunderbolt of vengeance. The dragon's fire consumes the ground as he flies, leaving a path of utter destruction in his wake. Lannister troops scatter in terror, desperately trying to escape the inferno as their camp erupts in flames. However, Tyrion remains exactly where he is, sitting calmly in his tent, a goblet of wine in his hand. This is exactly as he expected. He had gone to Braavos not to negotiate, not to plead for peace. That opportunity had long since passed. Instead, he had gone to bait Daenerys, to force her hand, to make her kill him, knowing that his death would be the final catalyst for the rebellion. The last thing the dwarf hears is the ground erupting, not just with dragon fire, but with a relentless barrage of artillery and ballista fire, all of which he had hidden within his own camp, a final desperate gamble to bring down the mother of dragons. He smiles as he and his carefully placed explosives are engulfed in a ball of fire. Drogon roars in pain as volley after volley of bolts strike him, piercing his scales, tearing through his flesh. He thrashes violently, his massive body writhing in agony, but the onslaught is unrelenting. The rebels had learned from the Scorpion, from Qyburn's designs. They knew a dragon's weak spots, and they exploited them mercilessly. With a final, anguished cry, Drogon crashes to the ground, his body a smoking ruin amidst the wildfire, a symbol of Daenerys' shattered dreams. Daenerys miraculously survives the fall, though she is thrown violently from Drogon's back, her body slamming against the scorched earth. Dazed and battered, bleeding from a dozen cuts, she stumbles to her feet. All around her is fire and death. Her army is in full retreat, a disorganized rout of panicked soldiers. The Jaqari scatter like rabbits before a brush fire, the Westerosi loyalists turning on each other in a desperate scramble for survival. The Unsullied, ever the epitome of discipline, hold their ground to the very last man, fighting with unwavering courage, but they are hopelessly outnumbered and are slaughtered to the last, their silver shields stained crimson with their own blood. Daenerys falls to her knees, her vision blurred by smoke and tears. She hears the jeers of the victorious rebels, the clash of swords, and the dying screams of her once great army. Around her, the world burns, but not by her command. This is not the controlled fire of conquest. This is the uncontrolled wildfire of destruction, a testament to her failure, Amidst the ruin, her face streaked with dirt and blood, Daenerys Targaryen simply walks off, alone. Her dream of a new world, a world without chains, has gone up in smoke, leaving her with nothing but ashes and regret. In the aftermath of the bloody battle, Jon Snow is brought into Pentos, a prisoner of war. He is led into a stone room where his sisters are waiting for him. Arya stands there, needle clutched tightly in her hand, her face grim with determination. Sansa is dressed all in black, her expression unreadable, but her eyes betray a deep sorrow. Immediately, Jon Snow knows what is about to happen. He is not a fool. He understands the price of failure, the cost of misplaced loyalty. He bows his head in acceptance. "I'm not here to make excuses," he says, his voice hollow with despair. "Whatever you have to do, just do it. Just know. We take no joy in this." Sansa steps forward, her hand trembling as she reaches out to touch his face. "If you have any final words, I'll hear them." Jon says nothing. His mind is still reeling, trapped in a horrifying loop of death and destruction. The fire, the violence, the senseless waste of life, all caused by Daenerys in her relentless, misguided crusade. He thinks back to what Tyrion told him in the cells of King's Landing so long ago and wonders how things might have changed if he had made a different choice. "Do your duty," Tyrion had said, "as I failed to do mine." Arya nods once, her face a mask of grief. She steps forward, her hand raised high, and drives needle into his heart, ending his pain, his guilt, and his part in this tragic story. With Daenerys gone, both physically and politically, her Targaryen empire collapses, dissolving like a sandcastle before the tide. Westeros fractures into different kingdoms, each vying for power, each refusing to acknowledge a clear heir to the Iron Throne. The dream of a united realm dies with her, leaving behind a legacy of division and conflict. Meanwhile, across the narrow sea, Dragon's Bay descends into chaos. The region splinters into a series of warring city-states, each vying for dominance, each struggling to survive. However, while many former masters attempt to reclaim their lost power, they face a harsh new reality. The freedmen, emboldened by their newfound liberty and empowered by their participation in Daenerys' armies, have already amassed too much influence in the military, the economy, and the political landscape. Simply throwing them back into servitude is no longer a viable option, not without sparking a bloody and protracted war. The cities of Dragon's Bay continue to outlaw slavery, albeit with varying degrees of enforcement. And with the loss of the largest slave markets, other cities across Essos struggle to meet the insatiable demand for human chattel. Far from destroying slavery in its entirety, Daenerys' crusade at least puts it into a state of decline, allowing places like Braavos to exert more control over the trade and hopefully steer it towards eventual abolition. It's a bittersweet victory, bought with immense bloodshed and leaving behind a legacy of both hope and despair.